Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today for a project manager's guide to SAFE. Sorry for the delayed start here. You'll be shocked to know, had some minor audio issues. And in that vein, if you guys can't hear me or are having any trouble seeing the slides, just go ahead and pop that in the chat window and we'll be sure to stop and get it fixed. But otherwise, if you can hear me okay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Andy Rivers, who's your speaker today, and then we'll get right into the action since we've already wasted 6 minutes of your time. I'm Lindsay with Beyond 20, and Andy Rivers is a senior advisor with us here. He's our resident skilled Agile expert. He's also an IDLE expert. He's a certified Scrum Master, and he has countless cybersecurity certs. So what are you? SAFE expert and also security expert here with us at Beyond 20. So he's a former ACIO at the University of Tennessee System. So he's got a lot of experience managing Agile projects and security projects and IT service management projects in general. So we're very lucky to have him here with us, and he's going to drop some SAFE knowledge on you today. Andy, would you go ahead and tell us about us?
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. As Lindsay mentioned, we'll make the introductions brief here, so thank you for the one you provided for me. Just a little bit about Beyond 20. I see a few new names on the attendees there, so just a little bit about us. We are what I describe as a 360-degree IT service management company. What I mean by 360 degrees is we can help you do consulting, we can help you train, we can do tool implementation, so we can help you do that full gambit to go from where you want to go to find your vision, to defining your process, to getting implemented in a tool. So we can help you with the full gambit of things there. Today, to kind of jump into the presentation here, the reason that you showed up today is to talk through, SAFE and what's a project manager's guide to this. So I'm going to start out a little bit just to make sure we have the groundwork of, what is Agile? Because SAFE really is, scaled Agile. So let's make sure we're on the same page as, when I say Agile, exactly what that is. So when we talk about Agile, the easiest way to kind of talk about that is it goes back to the roots of the Agile Manifesto. And so when we talk about that, for those of you that maybe haven't seen this, the way the Agile Manifesto reads is that we value the things on the left over the things on the right. So it's not saying that we don't value the things on the right, just when given preference and being able to, we value the things on the left over the right. So individuals and interactions over process and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiations, responding to change over following a plan. So those are the things that sort of the core of Agile really is this Agile Manifesto. You can really think of as Agile as a way to get things done. It's a way to get work done. Just like, since this is sort of a project manager's guide, I imagine many of you on here may be PMPs. One of the ways to get work done is what we traditionally refer to as a waterfall method. It's one way to get work done. Agile is another way to get work done. A very common Agile implementation is what we call Scrum. And so Scrum, one of the reasons I call it Scrum is that we're getting in there, we're rolling up our sleeves, we're getting dirty. We are, cranking out work on a regular interval. So to kind of talk through some of the basics of Scrums is what we have is we define some interval that we call a sprint. Typically that's 1 week to 4 weeks. Most places we see and ones we've worked in typically do 2 weeks. That seems to be a good time frame between the planning that takes place to execution to being able to do a retro and plan for the next one. So you define some iteration there. Let's just go with 2 weeks as the example as we talk through. So we've defined our sprint's going to be 2 weeks. What we do is we work with the customer to say, okay, what are the things that you need done? From that, we define, here's our backlog. Whenever we go into each one of these iterations or each one of these sprints, we say, okay, here's the items from the backlog that we can get done in these 2 weeks. At the end of this iteration, there's a shippable product. We have something to show for it. We have something that is usable at the end of this time duration. So we have a shippable, product increment. And so we go into this saying, okay, we're in this next 2 weeks, we're going to look at the things that our customers need. The product owners define those. They refine them working with the product owner. And then we go into our sprint. We crank out the work. At the end, we deliver some sort of increment. Along the way, every day we're doing our Scrum meetings. We're getting together talking about, okay, what did you do yesterday? What do you have planned for tomorrow? What are you blocked on? And so that's the basics of Scrum. For many of you, this may be old school. You may have been doing this for a while. You know, maybe your first few sprints maybe look like this. Maybe we weren't quite as agile as we hoped or thought we were going to be. But after you do a first few sprints, and let me go and tell you out here, if you had trouble with your first few sprints, everybody does. Everybody struggles for the first, 3 to 4 sprints to really get things under them and really get them under control. Really, it takes around 6 to 8 before the team really starts humming along within this. So your first few sprints, may have looked a little bit like this. But you've been cranking things out now. So now your sprints are looking a little bit more like this. We're jumping hurdles. We're in front of the pack. We're doing great. And that works well because we have an agile team. Everything's going. Everything's plugging away. But what happens when we have more than one agile team? How do we keep these teams in sync? Not only how do we keep them coordinated, but how do we keep them aligned? Because now we have these two teams cranking out work at a very high rate. We're getting shippable increments. We're doing all of this. But how do we keep things in sync? And we see a lot of organizations struggling with this. What we see is oftentimes they're sort of what we call the silo. Each team's, in its own little silo. They don't really know what's happening around them. Sometimes they don't really care. They just know, hey, this is my work. I'm cranking out. I'm looking at my backlog. I'm shipping stuff out. Then we kind of see places as they kind of get a little bit more mature, they're aware of other teams, but there's no real collaboration. Yeah, we know there's other teams. They're doing something. We're not really concerned. We just know they're aware. They're kind of doing their own thing. Each team's working independently. Then you kind of get some teams with some collaboration. So we're aware of each team, but then we collaborate with them. But even in this situation, you may be able to see from the picture, we're kind of seeing a picture of a boat. Even in this situation, you can kind of see, all right, I'm concerned with everything in the front of the ship. You're doing everything in the back of the ship. So we're aware and we're collaborating because we're on the same ship, but we're still kind of viewing it as our own little areas. Next is this sort of overlap with some collaboration. So this may be, if you have a team that's really trying to do maybe some DevOps type things, those sort of stuff, that you may have like an infrastructure team and a development team that's really highly overlapped between what they need on the infrastructure side to what development's doing. You have some really tightly knit teams that are collaborating back and forth. Even as we go through, what we typically see is, organizations mature to a certain point where they sort of have the IT perspective that, hey, we're a ship, we're on a stormy sea, we're over a reef. We kind of know, this is what IT is trying to do. What we want to do, what we need to get to is what we have as the business perspective. What does the business have? That, hey, we're not just a ship on the sea, we're a ship in a jar. We're trying to get to this island over here. What is the ship trying to get done? What is the business trying to get done? That's what we should have, is what's the business perspective and where are we delivering value? One of the things to remember and recognize is that IT exists to provide value back to the business. IT doesn't exist just to do IT things. If the business goes away, IT goes away. And so we need to make sure we have this business perspective as we're doing work, as we're cranking things out, as we're doing deliverables. So what some organizations have adopted is this idea of a scrum of scrums. So we're kind of getting back to that challenge of how do I keep these multiple teams in sync? How do I keep them in sync toward the business perspective so that we're all working toward that greater good of what the business needs? So some organizations have adopted what we call a scrum of scrums. You can think of it as sort of the one ring to rule them all. How do we get them all together? We'll have a scrum of scrums. What you'll find out is that the scrum of scrums provides coordination but not alignment. So we kind of are coordinated. We know what the different teams are doing, but we're not always necessarily aligned. So we may be coordinated and saying, all right, we're building a car. You're doing this nice front end. It looks like this. We're coordinated that you're doing the front end. I'm doing the back end. We're going to have these done at certain times. So we're coordinated, but we weren't really aligned. So whenever we deliver it, here's the back end. We don't even have pedals on there. There's no blinkers. There's nothing there. We have this nice, shiny, front end UI, but nothing on the back end. So we didn't really stay, aligned with what we were trying to get done. We were coordinated. We hit all our deliverables, we hit our timelines, but we weren't really aligned. Here's another one that said, kind of maybe shows the picture a little bit better, that, yeah, they were coordinated as the tracks kind of went there, but they're not really aligned the way we would want to align them to be able to take a train down this track. So what this lets us know is we got to do more than just get all our smart people in a room together. So to be able to get the coordination and alignment, it's going to take more than just, hey, let's have all our smart people, have all our Scrum masters get together and have a Scrum of Scrum. What you find, what this often leads to is sort of the scenario of having too many cooks in the kitchen. So each one of them's kind of doing their own thing. They have their own concerns. They're coordinating. They're kind of working together. But again, there's that lack of alignment between, what are we doing? How does this fit to that larger, remember that the picture of the larger business perspective. So it's kind of another way of illustrating that yeah, we're hitting the target. We're there. We're just not quite hitting the mark. We're still just a little bit off with the things that we're doing. We want to be able to hit the center of the target every single time. That's what we talk about when we say we want to be aligned. So not only are we coordinated that we're hitting the same target, but are we hitting the same mark on there? Are we aligned together? And that's where the Scaled Agile framework comes in there. So this is where that framework comes in to be able to say, okay, how do I take these multiple teams, get them not only coordinated, but aligned? How do I get them aligned, not to just what IT wants from an IT perspective, but to the business perspective? How do I put these things together so that we are coordinated and aligned? And so that's where we come in with the SAFE framework. And so the SAFE framework is great. They've recently updated it. It's on version 4.5 now. That update came out in June. One of the recent updates that they came out with was this idea of having this configurable framework so that you can have different levels from what you want within the SAFE. So you can start out with just sort of the essential SAFE. What's the bare minimum to be able to do this? And as you grow, as you mature, you can kind of move from essential to large to portfolio to full. Some of you may be in a large organization that you may not be able to start out as essential. You may have to have some of these components or pieces that are part of the larger frameworks for you to get started. But the idea is that you can start and grow into it rather than immediately starting out within the full framework. Now, what you may have noticed from the picture is there's a lot of stuff on there. So you may be thinking, man, there's no way we're going to be able to cover all of that in the next 45 minutes. And you are correct. There is no way we're going to be able to go through all of this. So what I have done is I've pulled out some of the key elements of SAFE that really distinguish it from some other frameworks and some of the key things that lead it to being successful, and some of the key things that you need to know as a project manager and as a leader that will be involved within a SAFE implementation. So those core principles that we're going to talk about today are those Agile release trains, the PI planning, and we're going to talk about a prioritization tool that'll help you prioritize things both within SAFE, and then it can be a tool that can be leveraged for any types of things that you need to prioritize. So first, let's talk about this idea of an Agile release train. So an Agile release train, one of the reasons they've kind of gone with this is that, let's talk through the train. So we're all on the train. So we're on the same train. We're going to the same destination. So we may be in different cars, we may be, kind of reading different things or something, but we're all going to the same destination. So we're coordinated and aligned. The other thing that comes along that's really nice about using this sort of train idea is the fact that, hey, if I don't catch this train, I'll catch the next one. There's going to be another one coming right back along. We're located here in DC, so I take the metro every day, and I very much understand the concept of, hey, I missed that train, I'll get on the next one. And so that's the idea that, hey, so if this feature or functionality doesn't make this train, it can make the next one. There's going to be another one coming along. And so this is really how we sort of organize the work of how we're going to get it done, is we organize around these Agile release trains. And then we do some of these other activities to kind of define, okay, where's that destination? What's this final thing going to be to help make sure that we're aligned as we go through this? If you notice, so I tried to pull out on the diagram here. So we have the full diagram. If you look at it, you can pull out and see the Agile release train within this. The SAFE website is fantastic. If you go to the SAFE website, they have the diagram there, and every piece of this is clickable to go and dig into it and get more information. So it's a really good resource. it's also a lot easier to consume than some other resources you may be looking at. So we don't have to go pick up, an 800-page book and try and figure out what page is everything on. You're able to go to that site, be able to click and navigate exactly what you're trying to look for and learn more about. So we're briefly hitting on Agile release trains. If you're like, oh, I want to learn a little bit more about that, you can quickly visit their site, click on Agile release trains, and it gives you more in-depth information on that. And that's true for each one of the things that we're going to talk about as we go through. So we have this idea of an Agile release train. So we're on this train. We're going to define what we're doing, where we're going, the destination. That definition comes through PI planning, so program increment planning. So what are we going to get done? And so typically when we talk about this, we have some sort of defined cadence both within the PI, how long is a PI, and then what is our cadence for delivering things within that PI. So typically we say, okay, we see most PIs being a quarter. So what are we going to get done in this quarter? So 10 to 12 weeks. We see most places pick the quarter. And what happens is this PI planning event it is a 2-day all hands on deck. Everyone gets together to talk about, okay, what are we going to get done? The business is there. So the business is there to say, okay, here's the things we need. They come with a vision. Hey, here's a vision of what we want to get done. Here's the top 10 features that we need. So not only have they defined big picture, but they're also giving us the top 10 features that they want. So that's helping establish what is the business perspective of what IT needs to get done. So as part of doing that, that's how we start out this program increment planning. If you've done a few, it actually starts out with, hey, this is how the last PI went. These are all the benefits we got. This is why we did it. It's awesome. That's how one starts if you're not doing your very first one. Your very first one, though, is going to kind of start out with that because you haven't done it yet. But big picture, you start out, they define, okay, what is the vision? What's the top 10 features? We then have this all hands on deck meeting. It has, you may have between, 50 to 125 people there when you think about all your Agile teams, all your developers, all getting together for this meeting. There may be a few of you sitting there on the call going, whoa, wait a minute, that is really expensive. Yes, it is. But think about the expense that you're paying now by not doing this. How expensive is the rework, the churn, all these other things that happen from us not understanding the business perspective, of us not being aligned with each other. What are all these things that's happening? You're paying that cost already. This one just helps us say, hey, we're going to get together. We're going to be on the same page. This is what we're going to deliver at the end of this increment. So, let's say within this quarter, we started out, the business comes and says, here's our vision, here's our top 10 features. We then as a team say, okay, in this Agile release train, this is what we are going to get done. So I'm going to kind of oversimplify it as in examples here, but you can say, okay, these top 10 features, team 1 says we'll do feature 2 and 3. Team 6 says we're going to do feature 1. Team 7 is going to do, feature 8. And so we go through and we pick through which one of these features we can do, each team saying they're going to do it. One of the things about this all hands, this 2-day thing is it is all hands on deck. So it is intended to be everyone on site in the same location. Part of that is getting everybody together so they can do the planning, so they can talk, so they can be together. Part of that is too, so you can leverage expertise across your teams. Let's say one of your top 10 features is, develop a shopping cart feature. Well, somebody may have already developed a shopping cart. They may be on team, 7, but they're going to look at that and go, oh, hey, I can go over there and help that team. I did this recently. Hey, I can share that with them. If people are remote, if we're not getting them together to talk, if we're not starting with that vision and top 10 features list, they probably never would have ever known that was happening until maybe the feature got released and like, oh, well, there's a shopping cart feature. I already had that written. I wonder why we spent 3 months trying to figure that out. I already had that. It helps avoid that. And by having everybody there in person, it really helps those communications. It really helps those types of things happen. So we go through, we do our 2-day event. Basically, we do the business plans, the vision. They talk about the top 10 features. Day 1 is we get together and we kind of say, okay, here's the things we're going to do. Between day 1 and day 2, the business actually gets a chance to kind of review what we said we were going to do. So let's say we go through this and their top 10 features, nobody picked feature 4, but that is hugely important to the business. They can come back and say, all right, we got to do feature 4. Like, we got to figure out how do we get everybody on the same page, but we got to have feature 4 for this quarter, for this PI increment. And so they're able to kind of adjust things there, rather than in other models, we might have gone through a whole delivery cycle before they're like, whoa, wait, where's feature 4? We thought we were going to get that. And so this immediately, the business tells us what they need, they vet it, yes, we're good. We then do some more planning and we go forward. For each one of the PIs, there's defined objectives for each one of those. So in this, we have everybody defining at the beginning. The business is there, IT is there. We're all there to be able to say, okay, we're all on the same page for what's getting done within this duration. Some of the things to notice is this starts at the top. This starts out by getting that business perspective and input into it. So we're doing that coordination and alignment begins by getting that business input. Big things are they define that vision. They give us those top 10 features. So we have those going into it. A lot too around the value streams you'll see there. Those can be either operational or development. So operational, we need to get this new thing out. Developmental is we need to develop this new feature or functionality. If you're looking in your model, these PI planning events, you can see them toward the bottom of this. So we have these PI planning events on regular increments. And so we have those, we're going to say once a quarter. So we're going to have those once a quarter. In between those, that's where we are cranking out our work. That's where the individual teams are doing their work. So that's where your individual Scrum teams are working. Every 2 weeks, we have a check-in. Some of the big things too is that we're all working from the same tree. So we're all working from the same source code. We're all working together, checking things in the same tree. That way you don't end up with deviations and, you know, one team suddenly checking something in at the last minute that breaks everything out. If you have features or functionality that's not operational yet, just comment your code out, but we're still using the same one. We're not gonna, that's gonna help us stay in sync and stay coordinated as we go forward. We also have regular system demos, and those system demos is where we are showing everything together working. And so, you know, we think about integrations and those types of things. All of those get vetted and tested and worked out through the system demos using the same thing. So at the end, we have a lot more quality built into it. And so that's one of the big things that we're trying to do is build the quality in as we go, not come back later and try and put quality back into it, because it's way easier both from, you know, being efficient to delivering a really good product is to have that quality built in as we go. Here's a picture of the event. So, you know, hey, this is a big, massive event. You're going to have screens up. You're going to build really big sort of, you know, walls with Post-its of here's the features and functionalities we're going to get. Here's what one team's taking. Here's the dependencies. You're going to build and map all that out. So it's a really cool event. It does take, you know, you think to get everybody there to make it fruitful, it does take a lot of planning and coordination ahead of time. So again, we talk about, hey, everybody there. It's expensive. The expensive is going to start even before everybody gets there on site for 2 days, because you want to make sure it's the most efficient as possible. The big thing is you're paying that expense now anyway. You're paying it through the lack of coordination, the lack of alignment, teams not being and delivering things. And so this helps us all get on the same page and deliver and meet things to the business perspective. Now, as I've gone through this, you may have already been looking at the model. You may have been looking at that sorts of things. Maybe look at the title and be like, well, wait a minute, where's the project manager at? So you may be doing the Ron Burgundy of project manager. Where are we at? Where's the project manager role within this? If you notice, there's no specific role within this model designated as a project manager. And so where we see most people fitting that are project managers now, they either fit up here at the top in the portfolio, helping keeping these things aligned. Now, this is different than managing, you know, your portfolio and those types of things like you're doing now. There will be an adjustment. There will be a change as you go through this. This is just sort of showing you where we see most people that are in a project management role now, where they align best whenever you implement SAFe. So one is this higher level at the top, kind of helping maintain that alignment between the business, working with the value streams, helping with the budget side of things. The other area we see people working into is shifting into more of the Scrum Master role and managing the individual teams as a Scrum Master rather than as typically as a project manager. One of the things to recognize, though, is that this will fundamentally sort of change the way your organization works. It's going to be an organizational level change. Project managers are hugely positioned to be able to help with this. You're the people that are already working across the different teams. You're already leading things within your environment. So you have a great chance to be able to really be an influence within this. So you can sort of view it as, hey, this wave of change is coming, and we either have the option to lean into this wave, lead it, help steer it, help find your role within it, or you can try and stand against it and be constantly fighting the waves, which typically doesn't work out well for any of us. But to recognize is that, hey, there will be a change. There will be a change within this role. Typically, those changes lead to either leading things at that high level within the model, within the portfolio side, or managing things more on the day-to-day within the Scrum Master role. Now, one thing of note, sort of the danger zone, some things you got to be aware of is this model is not designed, as most models aren't, to also have all these roles and have these different leadership places and then still have project managers coming and checking on things. If you do, you're going to end up with too many layers of management. You're going to have your Scrum Master checking on things, your Agile Release Train Engineer checking on things. You're going to have all this happening. And what it's going to lead to is you're going to have all these layers of management, or really of oversight, coming and checking on individuals. And it's going to lead to something like this. Your teams they're not going to respond well. It's going to cause havoc in your environment. So as you look to where your role is, it needs to be within the framework. You don't want to create, as that other picture, sort of this project manager over the top of all of this sort of things. You need to figure out, how do you fit within this framework, use the skills you have, use the interactions to be able to move this framework forward. But what you don't want to try and do is suddenly overlay your project managers on top of this. That won't lead to success. You'll have a lot of challenges. You're going to have people, you're really going to disrupt your individual team members by having too many people kind of come in and try and control things. So we kind of talked about the Agile Release Train, talked about our program increment, this big PI planning event, the things we got to get done, things we got to do. Now, it's still nice to be able to have some tools for prioritization. So one of the things I really like within this framework is what they've introduced as sort of, the work shortest job first. And so the idea is that you can do anything but not everything. And so how do we prioritize? How do we get things done? Even within the, we have a vision, we have the top 10 features. You're still going to unpack those features down to the user story level. How do we really focus on the things that give us the most value the quickest? Because the idea is that, the value doesn't really, we don't get the value in just having the idea, we get the value in the result. So the value came when we actually created, when we had a working incandescent light bulb, not just, hey, I have an idea for a light bulb. The results is where the value was actually seen. I'm going to walk us through an example of this. So this is a great tool that's within this framework. You can see more things within it, but it's also a great tool that you can use when you're trying to prioritize just about any other thing. And so we're going to kind of walk through an example. The idea is, how do we work the shortest job that gives us the most value so that we realize that value for the longest period of time? So if you're still following along, what I'd like you to do, kind of as an example as we go through this, list out your top 3 projects or initiatives for Q3 in priority order. So go ahead and list them out, 1, 2, 3. And so 1 being the most important, 2 being next, and 3 being the third importance of level. So go ahead and write out 1, 2, 3. To kind of help us go through this, I'm going to just kind of create examples as we go through here. So here's an example that I created of this. So, number 1 was we feel like we got to get a website redesign done. Number 2 is we feel like we got to do a new product launch. And 3 is a major ERP upgrade. What you can do is kind of create a little table like this, because we're going to talk through some different things. So go ahead and at this point, just list out 1 through 3, the individual items that you want to do. The first thing that we are going to evaluate is this idea of user business value. What is the thing that brings the business the most value? Do our users prefer this? What's the impact of the revenue to the business? Is there, potential delay on us? What's the impact of not having this? But what is the user business value for this item? for each one of these items, you're going to score them. We're going to use relative scoring, and we're going to use the Fibonacci number scheme to be able to do that. And so what you want to do is look at your list and pick out which one has the least amount of user business value. So which one has the least, and give it a 1. From there, you will then relatively score your other 2 items compared to what that one is. So let me show you my example that I've done here. So I've gone through this, and so I have my 3 things: my website design, new product launch, ERP upgrade. So when I compare these things against each other, I've said, okay, the ERP upgrade has the least user business value. So I've given that a 1. Now I look at that and I go, okay, relative to the ERP upgrade, the website design is an 8 on user business value. The new product launch is a 21. It really has a high user business value. So I want to relatively score that higher than the ERP upgrade. So you're looking at each item, making sure you assign a 1. You have to have at least 1 on there that has a score of 1. You may have more than 1, but you need to have at least 1 that's scored as a 1, because then that allows you to relatively score the rest of them. The next attribute that we're going to look at is time criticality. Is there a deadline for this? Does the value decay over time? Do we need to hurry up and get this out so that we can, we don't lose out on things. And again, what you want to do is look at your 3 items and score the one that has the least time criticality with a 1, and then relatively score them from there. So in this case, I gave the website design the least amount of time criticality. We have a website, it's running, it's not great, we want to update it, but it's still there, so time criticality is the lowest. Similar sort of thought process with the ERP upgrade. There's no looming deadline, those types of things. I did relatively score the new product launch way higher, because if we don't hurry up and launch this product, another competitor will. So there is a time criticality associated around the new product launch. Now let's look at the third aspect that we want to rate things on. The third one is this idea of risk reduction or opportunity enablement value. So does it reduce some risk somewhere else? Does it give me opportunity enablement somewhere else down the road? So if I do this encryption, it'll reduce our risk on policy compliance and those types of things. If I develop this API, both it helps me complete the work I have in front of me, but it has a huge opportunity enablement value going forward, and the fact that I can leverage that API for other future work. So that would have a high opportunity enablement. So we're looking at things that either reduce our risk or provide us future opportunity enablement. And again, you're going to relatively score these things against each other. So in this case, I went through and I gave, okay, our new product launch, I've given that as a 1 to reduce our risk or opportunity enablement. So that one's a 1. Then relative against the other ones, we get a lot of opportunity enablement by doing our website design. Same thing for our ERP upgrade. So both of those give us a high level of opportunity enablement. We could carry the analogy farther if we wanted to and say maybe the ERP upgrade had certain security things that reduced our risk as well. But really the idea is, okay, which one of these provides the most? In this case, we decided the new product launch has a 1. It's one of the least, and so we relatively scored the rest of them. So this gives us the 3 aspects to sort of compare these against each other. The next thing that we want to talk about is, what's the job size? What's the effort required to get to the definition of done? When you're starting out with this, you want to use duration. So days is probably the best way to do it. After you've been doing this for a while and your teams are established, you're consistent, velocity, all those types of things, you could shift over and use story points or other types of things that you may do within your Agile environment. But starting out, we got to have some way to get us started. And you think of that PI planning event, we're coming in there with 10 different teams, trying to figure out consistent pointing for that. It's almost an impossible task. And so what we start out with is, okay, what is duration? So we just kind of know, and that'll help us drive things. And you can shift away from duration later on once you're more mature. But starting out, we're going to start with, duration within days. And these examples, I'm just saying, hey, pick is it 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? You know, how many days will it take? So looked at this and we're saying, okay, the website design is going to take us 120 days. The new product launch is going to be 90 days. Our ERP upgrade is going to be 45 days. So we kind of have these mapped out. This is duration of what it's going to take. Now that we have all these calculations, or have all these numbers, now it's time to calculate the work shortest job first. And what we do for this is we calculate the first three. So we add those three together, the user business value, the time criticality, the risk reduction, and the opportunity enablement. We add all those together, and then we divide them by the job size. Whenever we do that, your high score wins. Your high score shows you, okay, which one of these brings me the most value the quickest. So if you followed along, it may be interesting to see what happened to your top three things. You know, did it impact them? Did it rechange the order of things? From the one that we did, the example I was giving. In this one, if we went by pure work shortest job first, it would shift things around because the ERP gives us the most value the quickest. Now, if you went through this and your numbers didn't change, that's fine. The point of this exercise wasn't to somehow trick you into changing your priorities. It was to give you a more comprehensive sort of structure for evaluating and defining your priorities. Because now, if you have one, let's say our website design is number one, we now have some data to back that up. Not just that, hey, we thought it was, but we have data to back that up that includes, you know, the business perspective, it includes the time criticality, it includes any risk reduction, future opportunity. So it's more comprehensive than us just saying, oh, we think this is, you know, the top priority. I recommend if you use this, if you use it outside of the work shortest job first, it's a great tool for prioritization. We use it all the time. I sort of recommend that it's a tool, one input into prioritization, not the only input. And so you'll get this. We use it within our CSI register. Some of you may have downloaded our template, but we have a CSI register out there that has this incorporated within it. And that allows you to have one input into, hey, I'm trying to decide what do I work on first. This is a great way to be able to say, hey, what am I going to work on first? What brings me the most value the quickest? So it's a great tool to be able to determine prioritization. I gave this presentation recently, and somebody asked and kind of brought out an excellent point that, you know, even though we're getting the user perspective, user business perspective, and those types of things, this is a prioritization tool. It's not meant to somehow supersede or circumvent your IT governance process. You still have to have governance. You still have to have those things set. You still have the prioritization set from the vision within the framework, those top 10 features. So this is just a tool for us to use when we talk about prioritization. So let's talk about, let's go over the review and talk about some of the things that we discussed today to make sure we got them all. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat window as we go along. Lindsay will kind of put those together and we'll review any of those that you may have. So we talked about the scaling Agile. So this framework provides us both coordination and alignment. So not only do we have are we able to sort of scale this and tackle the challenge of, okay, Agile's awesome. Now I have 10 Agile teams. Man, how do I keep all this awesomeness aligned? How do I keep them kind of where I want them to go on the same page? That's what the scale framework allows us to do. It allows us to maintain that business perspective, deliver things with built-in quality at set duration. So we get predictability for the things that we're doing. We get quality through this process. And it allows us to do this on scale with multiple teams. So it's really good for, you know, large enterprises, those types of things. You can still incorporate pieces of this even if you're not a large enterprise. We have incorporated pieces of this within how we do our own work because this is there's a lot of really excellent concepts in here. And so, you know, some of those concepts or those core components that we talked about was that idea of an Agile release train. So that's getting all of our people together, they're on the train. We're together on the same train. We're going to the same destination. To determine that destination, we have our PI planning. So we know, hey, we're doing this, you know, every quarter. We're going to do our PI planning. We're going to get from the business. The business is going to tell us, hey, this was awesome. This is what happened last time. These are the benefits we got from it. Going into this PI, here's our vision for it. Here's our top 10 features. from there, our teams start picking out, okay, we can do this, you can do that. We're collaborating because this is a 2-day all hands event that we're all together. So we got a lot of collaboration between the teams, even subject matter experts working with subject matter experts to get the most out of everybody's time and skills. We go through one day. At the afternoon of the first day, the business reviews and says, yes, we're good with that, or no, we got to align things a little bit better to maintain the company or organization perspective. And so we come into day 2, we further refine it, we further commit. At the end of day 2, we say, all right, we're going to give a thumbs up or thumbs down until we all agree that we can meet these objectives, that we can do these things. And so we get that, we get agreement that everybody can do it. We then go forward and we start cranking through our work. Typically within the PI planning, you don't break things all the way down to the individual story level. Sometimes that will happen afterwards when you start working with your individual teams. Some organizations or some teams choose to have a third day after that so that they can break all their stories down and kind of have all that laid out and make, the backlog that they'll use for their scrums. You can do that, but just know that in those 2 days, you may not break everything down to the individual story level. You won't have time. You may not have all the information at that point. What we are agreeing to is here's the big things that we are going to deliver. As we develop, as we work, as we deliver things, we have an architectural roadmap that's defining, future state, where we're going, so we know we're all on the same page. We are staying in sync by having a defined cadence. We're also staying in sync by using the same tree, by working together, so it's all there in sync. That's getting us that built-in quality. We're ensuring that built-in quality is there by having those system demos on a regular basis where it's a fully functional, hey, is everything working? Is everything clicking? So we don't just go to the end of the quarter and go, oh, let's put this all together and see if it works. That's not what we're doing. We're making sure that we're staying in sync along the way, that we're coordinated, that we're still aligned and delivering the things that we're supposed to do and having that built-in quality as we go. We then talked about a great tool that's within this for prioritizing. It's great to work within this framework. It's also a great prioritization tool that you can use in anything that you need to prioritize. So we think about, how do I evaluate the user business value, any time criticality, any risk reduction or opportunity enablement, and then, what's the duration? How do I figure out what are the things that give me the most value the quickest? All of that's contained within the framework. The framework is available online. It's publicly available. You can reach out. We provide training on it. There's other organizations, but you can get additional training on it. But the resource is freely available, so that's very nice that you can go out there and learn more about it. As far as learning more about it, we do have some upcoming events. So we are doing Safe Scrum Master in our DC office on August 23rd and 24th. We are also offering an advanced Scrum Master class on September 13th and 14th. The difference between those is if you're on the line and maybe you haven't done Agile, maybe you're not a Scrum Master now, you're not really familiar with those concepts, you can start out in the Safe Scrum Master class. So you'll learn the basics of Scrum and how that fits into Safe. If you've been a Scrum Master for a while, you kind of understand those core concepts, you can start out in the Safe Advanced Scrum Master class. And that one's where we learn more about, okay, not only Scrum, but how does Scrum fit directly into the SAFe framework? Also, we have an Agile Foundations class. So, learning how does service management fit into all of this. They work very well together. They're not competing things. They work well together. So you can come take an Agile or an Agile Foundations class with us. That's August 7th through 9th in our DC office. And in all of this, we have to make sure we maintain security because just like we talked about building in quality, part of building in quality is making sure that we have the security accounted for as we go through this. So if you're looking to learn more about security, come join us for our CSSP class. If you are a project manager or leader, this is the cybersecurity certification I recommend for you. It is meant for management level, not necessarily the technical, the ones designing your encryption algorithms and those types of things, but you learn more about the fundamentals of cybersecurity and get a really good breadth of knowledge from taking it. With that, I will show my contact information. So if you need anything, feel free to email me, reach out to me directly. We have a YouTube channel. We try and put a lot of these videos up so that you can come and use that as a resource. While you're kind of looking at that, I'll see if we have any questions from the group.
We do. We've got a couple questions here. I'll start with a brief one. Do you ever see project managers taking on the release train engineer role?
Yeah. So I didn't elaborate hugely as we went into this, but one of the nice things about being the project manager is you go into this, like I said, if you lean into this, you can really get involved and lead the change there. And so, yeah, that'd be an ideal role. That would work out well for you. So, yeah, there's no problems with that. I've seen it. I've been successful. Yep.
Cool. The next one I've got is maybe kind of fun, but what are some common pitfalls you see with safe implementations? Is there something, I'll elaborate on my own, I guess. Is there something you see go wrong frequently? Anything to avoid there?
Yeah, the trying to shortchange some of the implementation, kind of like not by like saying, well, we see that PI planning thing and it's 2 days. What if we just did that as a half-day remote session? And so, I like the ideas, but not fully committing to it and missing some of those core concepts, the PI planning and some of those other things. The other pitfall is not having the right people involved. And so what I mean by that, the right people involved is, are the right people at the PI planning, the contributor level. Even more important is, do you have the business bought into it and aligned so that whenever we get that business vision in the top 10 features, that it really is representative of what the business wants and their perspective, and that we don't get halfway into an increment and the business comes along and be like, boy, what are you doing here? And have some major stakeholders that can sort of just, for the cliche, derail our train, that can really disrupt things because we didn't involve them from the beginning. So there's a buy-in that has to happen at the business level and a buy-in that has to happen at IT, and those are critical.
Yeah. Okay, so this next one's a little long. I'm going to just read it so I don't misrepresent the question. It's more along like the leadership role that you might see in a really collaborative environment, like a skilled Agile environment would be. So here we go. Okay. What methods do you use to keep individuals from going down their own personal rabbit hole? I'm sometimes challenged with pulling an individual who will just do their work all by themselves and not collaborate. And then I'll skip the next part, but she wraps it up by saying, I feel like a parent or teacher trying to gently coax this person back. Is there a better way to, when you're supposed to be working collaboratively, in this Agile environment, when you see someone, kind of going off on their own to bring them back into the fold and help them understand that this collaboration is not an option in order to work this way? Put on your
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, all of this is difficult because it deals with people and we're difficult. So
Yes.
so some things that may help in that case is the daily meeting helps. So one of the things is think about your daily scrum. Is your daily scrum structured in a way that it's obvious what's dependent on each other? So are you able to say, I'm just going to pick names, so hopefully I'm not picking actual names for who's involved, but let's say, Jane's, kind of over here doing her own thing, but what Bob needs done relies on Jane. Is that type of dependencies coming up within your daily meeting so that you're reinforcing the fact that, hey, you can't go off and do your own thing anymore. We all rely on. Mm-hmm. That also kind of comes back to the planning of what we're going to get done. So sort of, are you highlighting the fact that, yes, we are all integrated together now? There are some things that we just didn't have time to go hugely in depth within the framework, but where you start mapping out some of the dependencies of like, hey, this team needs this from this team, and you sketch it out and you make it very visual, between Post-its and like lines drawn. Think of like the detective boards you see on the shows where you're like, oh, this suspect and this and this. You kind of build those types of things so you have a lot of visibility into what's happening and what's needed. So I guess I would take that up. Sum it up. One is your daily touch points illustrating that so that you keep them from going too far down that rabbit trail because you're at least touching base with them, each day. The other pieces is do you have it visualized in a way that it's obvious that the other people are dependent on them and that they need them? The other thing to recognize, and this is maybe not the popular answer, is this highly collaborative environment, this structure is not for everyone. And so, that may be one of the things you discover. And it does happen. There are people that maybe are fantastic project managers that just don't make it in this type of environment, this collaborative sort of thing. And so they may want the more traditional waterfall. That you may have a developer that really doesn't want to do this. They want to just sit in their cube and crank out code. They don't like this collaboration. And some of these models may not work well for them. And so you got to decide, okay, is this for them and for you? Are they going to be successful in this type of structure? At its core, one of the things that SAFe also establishes is the idea of subservient sort of leadership, that all these leadership roles are trying to help people get their work done. So that's an aspect that's worked into the framework that may also help you a little bit with the individual of, are you approach it more of how do I help you get your work done, not necessarily the task tracking, like kind of micromanaging sort of thing.
Removing barriers.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. That's all I've got for questions. I know we're getting close to 1 o'clock. I'm sure you guys have other places to be. So, Andy, if that's all you've got, I'm going to go ahead and send these people about their day.
Yeah, that's all the fun I got planned for today.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. You'll get an email from me within the next couple of days with some information on how to claim your PDU if you are, in fact, a project manager. And I'll also send out a video of the session in case you want to revisit any of the content. So yeah, otherwise, reach out to Andy if you want to chat with him directly. Have a fantastic Wednesday. Thanks so much.